Meeting with Macon County Board of Commissioners to order. I'd like to welcome everybody. Seemed like we were just together, gentlemen. We had a meeting last night with the school board. It went very well, and appreciate that. Looking forward to working through the budget process this year. Welcome to everybody. Glad you're here. Announcements. Commissioner Tate, do you have any announcements that you need to make tonight? Commissioner Peppers?
Just a couple, Mr. Chairman. Remind everybody that on April the 20th, beginning at 10 o'clock, is the Special Olympics at the middle grade school. We hope everybody can come out. On the 27th is the dedication of our senior services building in honor of John and Doc Crawford. That's to begin at 2 o'clock. And also, please mark your calendar for April 15th at 2:30 at Courtroom B will be our public hearing about the dialysis for Macon County. We had 2 applicants that applied to provide the service, and so we will be having a public hearing. We expect a large crowd. So if you have an interest in that or have a family member interested in that, or just as a citizen, we encourage you to come out. This is just a normal process that takes place. But our application is in good shape, but we would ask we have a good turnout on the 15th. That's all for now.
We're trying to go.
It's May 15th, not April 15th.
What did I say?
You said April.
It's May.
May
Oh,
15th.
okay.
Thank you.
May.
You're lucky he didn't say March.
That's exactly right. Or November.
Commissioner Bill can't tell time on reading calendar.
But I know when it's 6 o'clock.
Commissioner Hayes, do you have any announcements? If we would, let's stand together. We have a lot of important things to do as a community, as commissioners, and I think normally a word of a moment of silence as we reflect on the important things in our life. Thank you. Commissioner Tate, would you lead us in our faith pledge?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Be seated. Do we have any additions? I know we've got the public hearing. We have none tonight. Public comment. We do have several folks for our public comment period. Mr. Friedman from the Canary Coalition. Recognize you, please.
Good evening, and thank you, Commissioners, for this opportunity to address you. My name is Avram Friedman, and I'm representing the Canary Coalition, a grassroots organization with more than 2,300 members, businesses, individuals, and professionals in the region. I've come tonight to urge you to join in a nonpartisan national groundswell that is materializing in support of a new amendment to the U.S. Constitution that will reverse the U.S. Supreme Court's decision on the Citizens United versus Federal Elections Commission case, in which the court defined corporations as people and money as a form of speech that cannot be regulated for the purpose of limiting corporate political campaign contributions. Historically, the process of introducing new federal constitutional amendments has begun with the grassroots and worked its way up the system in a democratic process that starts with groups of concerned and involved citizens, then continues with resolutions by local governments in small towns, cities, county governments, and eventually with state governments petitioning Congress to pass the amendment. So that's why I'm here approaching you tonight, to ask that you add your important voice to the People's Campaign to reverse the distortion of our political process created by the influx of unthinkable sums of corporate money into political campaigns. Corporations are not people and should not be granted the legal and inalienable rights of people guaranteed under our Constitution and recognized by our Declaration of Independence. A corporation can reside in multiple states and countries simultaneously. A corporation can exist for hundreds of years. A corporation cannot be incarcerated or executed for a crime. A corporation cannot enter into a marriage contract and conceive a child. A corporation cannot obtain citizenship or be issued a passport. A corporation cannot be enlisted in the military. A corporation cannot vote in an election. A corporation has no birth certificate, no death certificate. Money is not a form of free speech, it's a form of power. Corporate money has overwhelmed our political system so thoroughly and effectively that ordinary citizens can no longer compete with this corrupting influence. Our government is no longer of, by, and for the people. Our elected representatives are all too often bound by their indebtedness to the corporate political action committees that have poured money into their political campaigns. Public policy more and more reflects what is to the benefit of corporate profits rather than to the public benefit. And so, I'm submitting this resolution to you that, if passed, will go on to the North Carolina General Assembly. If you pass this resolution, you'll join with other local governments throughout the state who are, as we speak, considering the same action. Last Monday, the Franklin Town Board unanimously voted to pass it. We are also in the process of gathering legislative support in the North Carolina General Assembly to petition the United States Congress to pass this new constitutional amendment and send it back to all 50 states for ratification. We already have several North Carolina legislators who have agreed to introduce such a resolution in the coming legislative session in May. 2 states have already petitioned Congress, New Mexico and Hawaii. A similar petition has been introduced in Wisconsin and possibly in other states. Let's make North Carolina the first state in the Southeast to step forward on this important issue. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sheriff. Thank you.
Thank you very much for doing this.
Nora Kirkland, speaking to shingles dumped at Double Branches. Is that what that said?
Mr. Chairman and honorable commissioners, all but Commissioner Tate know me well, and you are about to. In the past, I come to you with petitions to right a wrong, to help people in need. Tonight, I'm the one in need. I've been told that coming before you tonight is essentially, can you all see me? I may as well be banging my head against a wall. But there is a real problem at a property called Double Branches. This is the diagram as it gets passed around. My property is obviously the one with my name on it, and there's a big, thick black line. I just want you all to know that that is a stream. Maybe you can take that and pass that on. I bought my property in 2003, and the man that lived next to me on this property moved to Florida and sold it to the name that's on here. That person is a self-styled builder. It turns, and I used to come down my access road, which is this light gravel lane you'll see here, and my property is indicated by the black heavy line. I would come down and see this neighbor cutting trees down, and then there'd be piles of boughs and the tops of the trees. And I thought, as time went on, I'd heard that he was getting into some financial difficulty and that actually his property had gone into receivership with the bank. I thought he was cutting firewood, either to sell or, in fact, to heat his house. I used to greet him socially if I saw him on this road doing the cutting, but then I began to get concerned because gradually trash was building up there, and buckets of nails and pallets and various things. What I didn't know until yesterday, when I brought a man with a track hoe in to clear this out, he actually had been taking used shingles off of his customers' roofs when he was re-roofing them and dumping it all in this yellow area that I've highlighted. I brought my track hoe man in thinking I had already taken the metal and the trash. I thought he was just going to have one load because I had seen the kitchen re-roofed on the house up here. I thought that's all it was, but it turns out it's a whole hillside, and he had been cutting those trees not as firewood but as cover. So all of the shingles has been hidden underneath this foliage. The reason I'm coming to you tonight is that this is not just a landowner's problem. My property's down here, so I have no cause. I am not part of the stream. It's really the problem of the new owner of this property now. But I drive by it and I see it, and what I am concerned about is this black line right here is actually a stream bed. And in typical fashion, the survey stakes go right down the middle. So I own that half of the stream, but the stuff is going to leach eventually over time and affect the stream. That ultimately goes, of course, into the Little Tennessee. Mr. Bearden has a teenage son. I think he just turned 15. His habit is to come over in this kind of clearing area here and play, as kids do. And so he may be affected by this. My hope is that we can come to some sort of partnership where for one time you waive the landfill fees so that I will come forward and pay to get a man to ditch dig it out and load it into trucks, but I can front $500. But an estimate has been made by Chris when he came out from the landfill, and he thought it would take 6 dump trucks to do this. And we're talking around $3,600 apparently of landfill fees. So there's a real problem that may threaten the health of residents that the county would want to take a look at, and it certainly is a major faux pas on the part of the bank when they held the property as the mortgagor not to have found this and inspected it thoroughly, and of course ultimately it goes back to the original landowner.
Thank you. Maybe I missed who, that's not on your property, it's on the adjacent.
Okay, the diagram should show wherever that is.
It's not on her property.
No,
Well, it may well end up in your chair, so.
I have talked to the property owner board and,
My property is the black line.
So whose property is the dump? Is it on McCall?
Yes, and that's now owned by Rick Rogers, the carpentry teacher.
Okay.
and I've spoken with that party, and, he was not aware of that either. And, the county manager can speak for the county position here, so.
County doesn't normally go out and clean up private property unless there's an animal health hazard. I did discuss this briefly with Chris Stahl, and I think we need to get back together and talk about any possibility. The request that Skirpin says is to waive the tipping fees. Unfortunately, the problem we have is we don't waive any tipping fees. Even the county pays tipping fees when we take stuff to the landfill, which operates on our enterprise fund. And so we have a small amount of money set aside each year for community projects and so forth. We don't have anything set aside to pay the tipping fees for the cleanup on private property. So if the board would like, I'll be glad to look into that, talk to our solid waste director, and see if there's anything the county can do. But ordinarily, I'm not sure the county attorney can speak to this. Ordinarily, we don't usually have the authority to go on private property and
To accumulate some additional facts from you, maybe some additional.
I was gonna say
The property owner said that he would come up with a plan of his own, take it to his property now that and there was no imminent danger.
Well, that usually falls back. The problem with the way the laws are now, even though someone else created this problem,
falls to whoever the current property owner is, so that person has to be involved in it, so we need to.
That's a very encouraging.
Yeah, he said he would,
Why don't you talk to Jack and maybe meet with the landowner, if you're offering to help pay for it, maybe he'll accept that. Might be a good solution. Jack, would you
Be glad to.
facilitate that?
He and I were working in tandem when we thought it was trash, and when we found that it was enormous, we thought we better bring it to the people who can do it.
Thank you.
What was the landowner? Rick Rogers.
Rick Rogers.
he just has acquired the property.
He works at Franklin High School. He's really, I graduated high school. Okay, thank you very much. Noriel. Shirley Chess, Citizens United at FBC, is that right? Shirley, welcome.
Hi. I'm just here to say that corporation is not a person. They have persons working for them as employees, and those persons can vote should they meet all the requirements of the state where they live. A corporation might be owned by many persons. That's why they're a corporation. They are individuals. They too can vote in their own state should they meet the state's requirements. There are stockholders in a corporation. They have bought into this corporation, and therefore they can reap some of the benefits should the corporation survive and pay them. They are individuals, and they too have an opportunity to vote should they meet the requirements where they live. The corporation in and of itself is an entity, and it should not have the ability to vote by the influx of its dollars. It does not, as Mr. Friedman so aptly put it, it does not eat, sleep, breathe, or bleed. I'm sorry, but therefore, how is it right for a corporation, in essence, to have a double vote? Because they would vote with their dollars, and all of their employees, many of whom will vote as the corporation wishes them to, has a vote. So that makes 2 votes against my 1 vote. I don't see that as legal or fair. So consequently, I would like to see our county stand with this amendment as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Shirley. Thank you. We have Mr. Vic Drummond here to talk about the 2012-2013 budget.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you very much for the opportunity to speak tonight. As you begin work on the 2012-2013 budget over the next several months, I urge you to make a substantial reduction in the personal property tax rate. I'll get to the rationale of this in just a minute. As a conservative Republican, I strongly believe in low taxes. I also believe that during an economic downturn, like we have been in for the past several years, it makes sense to reduce taxes and let taxpayers keep more of their money to meet their own day-to-day needs. Much of that money would be spent right here in Macon County and stimulate our economy. On June 14, 2010, I spoke during public comment to the former Board of Commissioners that was about to increase property taxes by 1.5 mils or 6%. I urged them not to do it. In my opinion, it was unnecessary because of the county's strong general fund balance at that time. The budget passed with the tax increase on a 4-to-1 vote. That took about $1.5 million out of taxpayers' pockets in our local economy annually. Macon County's comprehensive annual financial report for that budget period, ending June 30th, 2011, shows that the general fund balance increased by about the same $1.5 million that year. The tax increase simply wound up in the general fund balance. I believe that validates my point that the tax increase was unnecessary. I'd like to show you a bar chart. I don't know how many of you can see that very well. With data for the general fund as of June 30th, 2011, taken from the same county financial report, It shows why I believe there should be a substantial reduction in the property tax rate in the upcoming 2012-2013 budget. The red bar on the left shows the general fund expenditure for 2010-2011 of $40.2 million. The green bar adjacent to it shows the unassigned general fund balance of $16.8 million. The yellow bar shows the general fund balance required to meet the board's long-established 25% fund balance to fund expenditure ratio, which was $10 million. The difference between those two, the $6.8 million that exceeded your 25% goal, is money that should be returned to taxpayers. It should be in taxpayers' pocket, not the county's coffers. Finally, the blue bar on the far right of the chart shows the state's 8% suggested minimum fund balance of $3.2 million. Our county has set a very conservative goal of over 3 times the state's recommended level. I believe our 25% goal is reasonable, but I do have a problem when the county is at 41% or higher instead of 25%. This was June 30, 2011 data. We are now 9 months into the current 2011-2012 budget. This board did not cut that 1.5 mils from the current budget. So that extra tax is again being collected this year. I suspect the general fund balance will be even higher on June 30th, 2012. In order to start trimming down that $6.8 million excess, I urge you to cut the property tax rate in the upcoming budget by at least 2.5 mils or 9%. That would reduce taxes by around $2.5 million and reduce the excess to about $4.3 million. Each succeeding year, continue that process until the 25% goal is reached. It is important to point out that this tax reduction would have no effect on county employees or programs, as the money is already in the county's hands, and would not require budget cuts to make up for the lower tax revenue. With the excess $6.8 million on hand, I wonder if this board might be tempted to spend some of it on items it wouldn't ordinarily spend taxpayer money on. For these reasons, I urge you to cut the property tax rate by at least 2.5 mils in the 2012-2013 budget. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, before Mr. Drummond leaves, just see your chart just a minute, Mr. Drummond. I think this is right where our fund balance presently is $14.5 million. Is that right?
Yes.
So that's about 33%. So if you want to update your chart, that's where our fund balance is now, about 33. So that gives us about 8% working margin, and you'll do a presentation from the schools here shortly on some things. So just to update your chart.
And also might be noted, from last year's budget, we did allocate $1 million roughly from our fund balance to balance the budget. I would suspect that we'll do that again. We instructed our county manager to put together a very conservative budget for us, so I would certainly agree that we need to move in that direction, including designating some of that fund balance to our budget. So we are definitely headed in that direction, but at the same time, we do have a responsibility to take care of not things we choose to spend money on, but we do have things that are the county's responsibility. But we appreciate your comments. Thank you very much. We have Lucy Christopher. Lucy here? Yes. Lucy.
I'm from Cassius, and I'm a member of Occupy Western North Carolina, and I'm very thankful to be here to speak to you about the proposed resolution Mr. Friedman brought up tonight. I'm a member of his coalition also. I've been listening and realizing that some of the things I was going to talk about have already been said, and I was looking at some of the words on my paper, and I thought, you know what, why do we need an amendment? And some of the things I've been reading about recently, I want to share with you because it's helpful to me to grasp why do we need to go as far as a constitutional amendment. And I think maybe I want to say for the first time in my life it's hit me, maybe it's because the 14th Amendment didn't quite work. It was written sometime after the Civil War because the Civil War had not settled the case of the actual freedom of the people who had been enslaved. And when they wrote about them in the 14th Amendment, and that was the reason for the 14th Amendment, they called them persons. And since then, particularly corporations have found a loophole and have been using that to get more and more freedom from restrictions by the government, which is what their stranglehold was. They said they were held in check just the way that the slaves were about the slaveholders. And I guess I should say, admit as a woman that I'm glad for the 14th Amendment because women also have found a lot of freedom because we are people as opposed to corporations. The 14th, the decision made by the Supreme Court in 2010 begs the question of how our human votes can ever compete. As it stands right now, corporations control not only our economy, but our elections. Beyond election outcomes, corporate lobbyists control the votes of the very representatives whose elections they engineered. So we're going around in a circle here. This is where ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council, comes in, that we're hearing so much about these days. And yet, Congress has gotten elected, they've been lobbied all this time. Congress is the body who was elected to keep the corporations in check. We've got a real tight circle here. And I think this circle of dominance is a cruel joke on we the people. This proposed amendment that we have brought before you tonight would nullify that ruling and recreate for the 99% level playing field. Corporate lobbying has impacted every one of us. Our air, our water, plundered our underground resources, and most immediately, our economy. Corporations almost own our economy. This is local. This is not some vague thing we're talking about. I'll give you a few examples, and you know some of this. Macon County unemployment figures at 12.9. I found another figure, but Barbara McRae told me this morning I was too high, so she corrected me. A Franklin CEO told me recently that his institution is overwhelmed by the same Dodd-Frank regulations that too big to fail or Wall Street banks ignore with no penalty. And you know, Macon citizens are losing their jobs, homes, and lifetime savings. And this issue is not only local, it's personal. For our children and grandchildren, every year that passes, the status quo becomes more entrenched. It's going to be harder and harder to reverse this. And there are signs of encouragement. I mentioned those to you all earlier. The West Allis, Wisconsin vote, 70%, highly conservative town, this past week, and your Franklin board right down the street last week. Tonight, I have come to urge the Macon commissioners to exert the leadership your constituency have invested in you. First, by putting this resolution we proposed on your agenda for the next meeting, and then by voting yes at that meeting to send it to the General Assembly of North Carolina. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Alan, is it Lomax? Alan?
Good evening, Commissioners, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. My name is Dr. Alan Lomax. I'm from Jackson County, and it's a privilege to be with you here this evening, addressing the same issue that has been addressed here concerning Citizens United. First of all, I would like you to know that I am not anti-corporation. In fact, I have two corporations, and they are excellent entities for conducting the business for which they were chartered. These charters allow them to enter into contract, sue and be sued, and through human effort, perform all necessary business functions. When corporations act in accord with granted and earned privilege, rather than on the basis of inalienable rights, they benefit not only business, but also the enterprises of our communities for which they serve. Today, we live in a two-tiered nation. On one hand, we have the backbone of industry and job creation, which is our Main Street businesses, and the upper tier, which is composed of mammoth transnational monstrosities that have no patriotism, no communal interest, and no national allegiance. With their overwhelming wealth and the power it brings them, they control our government, bodies making laws and enforcing regulations that we must abide by, but from which they are exempted. An example of this two-tiered system is the TARP bailout and the Consumer Protection Agency that sprang from the debacle of the 2008 economic meltdown. Though our local banking institutions that engage in standard acceptable banking practices receive not 1 penny of TARP funds, they carry the heaviest burden of these regulations. In a recent meeting with a Macon bank official, we were shown a 3-inch regulation manual known as Frank Dodd Act. This banking official indicated the burden of regulation is becoming so heavy that the well-being of the bank is being seriously challenged. While our local banks labor under these massive regulatory burdens, the too big to fail banks responsible for the meltdown go on unimpeded, doing pretty much what they were doing before the meltdown, investing in risky and convoluted derivatives, overseas investments, and yes, taking the TARP funds that we the taxpayers supplied them and approved as a means for capital investment on Main Street, and taking those funds to buy up other institutions. Unbelievably, the major 5 too big to fail banks are even bigger today in 2012 than they were in 2008. And all of those banks bought out those other banks with the funds that we supplied them through TARP. It is such common practice today for transnational corporations to run roughshod over our local interests that we have come to be complacent in acceptance of the fact that this is good for capitalism. In the colonial days before the birth of our nation, the situation was not much different. The British Crown deliberately empowered corporations to plunder colonial resources and gave them privilege and power far beyond that of the colonists. We all remember the Boston Tea Party. What we often do not realize is that this was a revolt not just against the Crown and taxation without representation, but it was just as much so a revolt against a corporation, the East Indies Trading Company, that held a Crown-granted monopoly while being largely relieved of the burden of taxation. If this situation sounds familiar, it should, because this is not a whole lot different than what we see today, as I would expect that almost every adult individual in this room paid more in taxes in 2010 than General Electric did. In 1776, things did change for the Americans. The American revolutionists rose against the Crown and the corporations to bring into being a new nation free of these oppressive forces. For good reason, our Constitution does not mention corporations, and our Bill of Rights, protecting our inalienable rights, grants no such rights to corporations. Throughout the decades following the Revolution, court rulings, not legislation, began eroding the freedom from corporate tyranny for which our forebears fought and died. In 1886, 110 years after the signing of the Declaration of Independence, the unelected and appointed for life Supreme Court justices first sanctioned corporate personhood. So for 110 years, our nation survived and thrived without corporate personhood. This was in a case called Santa Clara County versus Southern Pacific Railroad. Ever since, corporate, artificial, non-human entities have used the court-sanctioned personhood doctrine to gain more and more rights while eroding our human inalienable rights. Citizens United versus Federal Election Commission ruling in 2010, just one in a long series of rulings relying upon the false notion of corporate personhood, grants freedom of speech, rights to corporations that should be reserved for the voice of we the people. The early American experience demonstrates that corporations can thrive without personhood and capitalism can flourish. We do not have to live under corporate tyranny. We can free our governments from the shackles of corporate rule, and it is time for a new revolution. I call upon you as Macon County Commissioners to follow the lead of the Board of Aldermen of the town of Franklin in passage of the same resolution, stating that money is not speech and humans, not corporations, are persons. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lawyer. That was all we had for public comment. Was there anyone else who wanted to speak?
I would certainly never ask you to follow the Board of Aldermen. I'd always want to say lead the Board of Aldermen.
This just come to us. If the board so wishes, then we will put that on the agenda for the May meeting. Okay, thank you very much. Item number 7 is adjustments and approval of the agenda. Gentlemen, we have a fairly short agenda, which is sort of a unique thing among the past several months, but it is fairly short, believe it or not. Is there anything we need to add, delete, or amend?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to add one item under maybe 10A, new business, permit request from Highlands Chamber of Commerce for pyrotechnics display.
I think we're going to clear that. Okay? We'll make 10A the permit from the town of Highlands for 4th of July. Okay. It'll be 10A. Anything else? No more you had?
Yes, under budget amendments, reflects the budget amendment, receipts for the meetings, budget amendment 168, that added in place. John Day had just received notice that this was receiving some additional park funds, so it's more revenue.
Okay. Commissioner Pepper, do you have anything to add or change to the agenda? Commissioner Bill?
Mr. Chairman, under reports and presentation, I did have one request from the board concerning another very special veteran from Macon County.
Okay. We'll put that under reports and presentations. We'll put that 8C. Commissioner Havey, do you have anything to add to the agenda? Okay. I would.
Mr. Chairman, I have one.
Okay, sorry.
We have a change order that we need to consider. It doesn't involve any money. But we need to go ahead and do the change order for H&M on our school construction project due to the more credit time for that weather did not work, and so we need to. There's no reason not to approve it because this goes back over a 2-year period, and they're getting close to finishing up most of their stuff now. So it asked that we consider adjusting the time schedule based on that. It still puts them within the scope of time that we plan on having the school finished. Still puts them over the June 18th. So we'd like to add that under new business.
We'll put that. That'll be new business. That'll be 10B. Anything else? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented, as amended. Second. We have motion and second by Commissioners Peppers and Beal. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The agenda stands as presented and amended. Under reports and presentations, I spoke with our county manager, commissioners, and asked him to update us on the budget process. As you know, we started like this back in January, and we gave Jack some directives from our board to get a general direction to go, and we are well into that process. So I thought it might be good if we heard a brief overview from him and presentations to where we were, and see if you have any questions about the budget process. So, Mr. Manager, if you would.
As Chairman said, we started the budget process back on January 14th. We had a work session, and at that time, we presented a proposed budget calendar for this year. I think there's a copy of that in your agenda information. And we called for a meeting with our department heads on February 17th, which we did. Gave them all the budget information and shared with them some of the comments that the board made during your retreat and work session on the proposed budget for next year. And we gave them some time to complete their budget request, to have it back in. And we actually started our review of departmental budgets on March of 28th. And as a matter of fact, our last one this morning at 10 o'clock with solid waste. But I'm happy to report that I think all of our department heads, the ones who could and have tried to hold the line on spending. Most of the budgets that we've looked at are either at or below current year levels. And so we still have some things to work through, not all of them, so there's some things out there that are not going to fit into that. Most department heads, and we have 21 department heads with about 24 different departments under them, and they've done a good job, I think, as they have the past 3 or 4 years holding the line on spending and helping us to get through. We're very fortunate, I think, in Macon County, and that the financial situation of the county is as good as it is compared to the other 99 counties in North Carolina. We still have the lowest property tax rate in the state, and our fund balance and our financial security of the county is something that probably most of those 99 counties would like to be in our position. When we talk to folks from across the state, we tell them what our situation is, they find it hard to believe. But I think the credit is due to responsible department heads who've been able to deal with shortfalls in budget revenues and so forth, and have adjusted in order to continue to provide the same level of service with fewer people in the last money that we had 5 years ago. We don't have all of the information on the revenues yet. Of course, the budget has to be balanced by state requirement, which means our revenues have to balance with our expenditures. It takes us a while, usually in the spring, for Mr. Leitner to get all this information together. We've had some preliminary discussions with him. We don't see a lot of growth in the tax base. It's pretty flat. There's a little bit of growth, a little bit of remodeling, a few additions and so forth, but nothing like the construction business was for the last decade. And so we're seeing pretty much a flat, no growth in the tax base for this year. And I'm sure Mr. Bill could attest to that from a personal standpoint. There's just not a lot of construction going on right now. We're working on that. We have received information from the state. Rebecca Troutman, who is one of the assistants for the County Commissioners Association, puts together what she calls her fearless forecast, which gives us some idea what to expect on state shared revenues and so forth. And also, so I'd like to comment on a couple of those things tonight, if I might. The other thing I'll mention before I go into that is we're still working on the approved classification of pay plan the board authorized last fall. We haven't got that completed yet. They're finalizing some other information that we had to send back to them, but we hope to have that pretty soon. We don't know how that's may or may not affect the budget, and so I don't want to make any projections on that until we see what their actual numbers are. But I'm expecting to have that information back in the next several weeks, before well ahead of the time we have to have the budget approved. But looking at statewide, in our county is not different than a lot of them. We have seen some increases in sales tax, for example. Sales tax accounts for the second largest section, a piece of money in our county budget outside of property taxes. And it's gone down a lot over the past 5 years. You can see that in the trend. But it's starting to come back up a little bit now. First 6 months of this year, we had about a 7.8% statewide increase in property and sales taxes. But we don't think that that's going to be throughout the entire year. So probably we're looking at an increase in sales tax, somewhere in the maybe 2 to 3% range from what the current year rate is. The other thing that we do is we get enhanced We've got EMS enhanced federal Medicaid payments because of the work of our association. And some of that was due to some stimulus funding. That's going to be lowered this year, so we're probably going to receive a little less than that. The other thing to keep in mind that it's not going to be in this year's budget, but it will be effective unless they change the schedule again. In July of 2013, the implementation of the new method on buying your property or automobile tag and paying your property tax comes into effect. That was supposed to happen 2 or 3 years ago, but now they've set the date of July 2013, and that may have some ramifications for us in next year, getting ready for the July 1st kickoff date for that. The other thing that has been affect the state and affected us locally is temporary assistance to needy families, which is a federal supplement grant of $36 million that went to counties throughout North Carolina this year. That has expired. And I'm sure Mr. Bill's well aware of that with this Health and Human Services Committee. We could expect some more cuts from the federal government to the state on that program. North Carolina continues as a state to have rather anemic growth. The high price of gas also has dampened recovery and slowed it down a lot, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. But North Carolina is lagging somewhere behind the U.S. Economy, and the GDP of our state only grew about 1.1% this past year, whereas the national average is about 1.7%. We see unemployment rates, and we've seen some of the highest unemployment rates that we've seen quite a while for the county and throughout the state as well. We were having a pretty good trend on unemployment, but the other thing that people don't really understand is we've added another almost 100,000 new residents in North Carolina in the past year. So because of those new residents, our unemployment rate continues to be high. So that's a factor we have to deal with. In January, statewide, it was about 10.3%. I think someone mentioned earlier that in Macon County we're right at the last record we had was in high 12, almost 13% unemployment here. So we're right now in North Carolina the 5th highest in unemployment. So that's something that's going to be tough. Like I said, our sales tax is coming up some, but not nearly as fast as we'd like it for it to be. The current year's state budget, and the county depends quite a bit. We're creatures of the state, and although we would like to think we have total control of all the revenues and expenditures that come through the county's books, unfortunately, about 2/3 of the budget is dictated by what the state requires and enforces that either the state or the federal government forces us to do. And so we have not as much discretion as we would think that we would. But the General Assembly has, I think, remained pretty adamant that in their pledge not to try to balance the state budgets and create county budget problems. And so we're hopeful that they'll stick to that theme anyway, and not create any more problems for us on the local level. Our greatest concern probably is in this Medicaid thing, and it's big. People don't realize just how big that is. And the Medicaid deficit alone in the state, and thank goodness the counties don't have to put money into Medicaid like we were doing just a few years ago. Otherwise, this would not be a state problem, it would be a county problem as well. But on the statewide average, we're looking at $159 million over on the statewide budget for Medicaid than what they anticipated to be this year. So that's a growing problem. State revenues are slightly ahead of their projections, but not by much, about 1.3%. The General Assembly is coming back into session on May the 16th for the short session. It's going to be about 6 weeks. I think they'll come in, do what they need to do for their biannual budget, and go home pretty quickly. They already have a budget, a 2-year budget, which includes the next year, so they'll make some tweaks on that, but I don't expect them to spend a lot of time on that. And our concern is always, if things are shifted from the state to the local level, there's always a possibility that the only way to continue to provide those services that the counties are required to do is to find new revenue. The only revenue that we have to look for on the local level is property taxes. So a shift in state responsibilities to the county will result in an increase in property taxes at the county level. So we're always aware and concerned about that. We also understand, I think Superintendent brought up in the meeting last night, that the governor is going to propose in her budget a 3/4 cent sales tax this year, and that money is supposed to be direct board education, but the indications that we get is that it's not gonna get a very warm reception in the General Assembly, and it's probably not gonna pass. But that's probably gonna be in her budget, or recommended budget. As a reminder, the 2012-13 budget includes reductions, as we talked about last night, $74 million in public school funds, with total recurring cuts of nearly $500 million, a $20 million non-recurring cut in school bus replacements will also kick in this year. We had a chance to talk about that last night, but that's going to have an effect on what we're going to do here too. When the state decides to quit buying buses and we still have to have buses, the buck's going to stop here with the county, so that's something we have to consider as well. The other thing we did talk about was the ADM fund for proceeds for school construction. Again, the General Assembly has redirected that money, that ADM money that was used for basically for construction projects in the county. They redirected that money again toward the public school operating. And so it still maybe gets some benefit for the school, but that money was dependent, and the county's dependent on that for school construction and debt service and so forth. And that has been redirected by the General Assembly. While the General Assembly's funds diversions do not impact current ADM balances, we're still concerned that fund balances in both ADM and the lottery could be targeted in the revenue picture the state's trying to put together, which is a concern that we all have. Some good news, our local government retirement system contribution is going to go down by 0.14% this year. It went up considerably in a year or two ago, but it's going to go down a little bit this year. It's not going to save us a great deal of money, but at least it's trending in the right direction. And we will continue to work on budget. As we said on our budget calendar, we want to go ahead and have the budget balance as required. As the county manager, I'm also the budget officer, which requires that I submit a balanced budget to the Board of County Commissioners no later than June the 1st. We try to do that in May, and we will do that in May. We had planned on our budget calendar to have that to you on May the 8th, and we'll still have it ready by that time, but if there's any change in dates on that, we'll work with you on it. But our goal right now is to have a balanced budget presented to the board, keeping the board's goals and priorities in mind by May the 8th. After that, we'll have a series of work sessions with the board. We'll look at it in detail, all the expenditures, all the revenues, all the programs we're involved in, projects and so forth, and make any tweaks or changes to the budget the board wants to do at that time. And we're still scheduling at this point to have a public hearing on a proposed budget by June the 5th. And that seems to be pretty reasonable at this point in time. And the county has been very good about getting the budget adopted better than the state has in past years. Getting the county's budget adopted in fiscal housing board before the end of June, which is the end of our fiscal year. So we anticipate being able to do that again this year. Hold the line on taxes, hold the line on expenditures, and continue to keep the county in sound financial shape.
Thank you, County Manager. Any questions to Jack about the process where we are?
Let me ask on this right here. You was talking about May 8th. It's going to be election day. We're going to be meeting with the board that night.
That could be a problem, but because that is the election day. We didn't realize that when we put the budget calendar together, but that's our regular meeting date with the board. We do have to have, and I think the county attorney probably backed me up on this, that's our regular meeting date. We also have scheduled for that day our comprehensive annual solid waste plan public hearing. And so we need to go ahead and continue to have that on the 8th. It may be that the board wants to have the public hearing on the solid waste plan and recess until a day or two or a week after that, and we'll take care of the rest of the business that will be involved in that week. So that's something that you might want to consider.
All right, very good. I know there's Superintendent and Tim are here. Appreciate you guys meeting with us last night. The next major thing on our calendar, I guess, Jack, is the department head is to get that school budget, which is the largest part of our budget.
The school's been pretty good about getting it earlier. The state statute requires them to have the county by the 15th day, but they usually beat that deadline, and so I think they're working slow to get that done now.
What do you think you'll have that by May 1st? I don't know about you guys, I had a couple of questions about the technology stuff we talked about last night.
On the technology, I promise no libraries tonight, Dr. Chairman. I won't say a word, I promise.
I guess I just got a question about, because I was on the school board, as you know, Tim, we had set aside, and I think my recollection is that we had budgeted about $250,000 a year, roughly a little more to start with. We were, and my recollection of history, I believe this is correct, you can verify this, we were about 80th in the state in the 80s out of 100 counties in computer connectivity. In other words, access of our children to that.
Computer to student ratio, we were 80th at one point in time.
We were 80th, and our goal, I know when we set our goals in 2001, 2002, was to improve that ratio, that connectivity, if you would, for the students. And I think we've improved that. By 2006, we were
About 11%. We're 11% mark on the state.
we were 11th out of 100
11, I'm sorry, yeah, 11.
I guess I wonder how we got, I've been out of the loop, and we were putting aside $250,000 a year or so to sort of keep up with that, and I know you've had some budget cuts, we talked about that in general last night, but after the meeting, I had some questions in my mind, and I thought it'd be good if we just asked that. Where did you have budget cuts? Where was money reallocated? You did continue to spend that money. Where did what happened with that?
Right back then, we were taking about $250,000, $300,000 out of the capital outlay. Then we started pulling our money for our computers, the money that we spent for upgrading computers and buying new computers. We started pulling that money from the public school building fund, and we did so for about 3 or 4 years. Well, about 3 years ago, that money dried up. There is no more public school building fund money. So for the past 3 years, we've had no capital outlay money to buy new computers or refresh our computers. The previous years, the past 2 years, we didn't get quite 300. It cost us about $386,000 to stay on a 5-year refresh. That means a fifth of our computers. We replace a fifth of our computers every year, and no computer in the system.
Is that what it surprised me to hear that you're on a 9-year?
You're on a 9-year now. Our oldest computers are 9 years. 64% of our computers are over 5 years old. They're approaching 6 years, with 15% that are 9 years old.
So you lost the public school and ADM money?
We also lost our state allotment in PRC 15. That didn't amount to a lot. They paid for a lot of necessary things that we had, repairs and things like that. So that was about a $50,000 loss from the state.
So other than sloping years, what you were talking about testing coming up, explain that a little bit.
Right, North Carolina.
Confused about that.
Yeah, exactly. North Carolina has set a standard to have all online assessments by 2014. So by year 2013, 2014, they're going to have all EOCs online. That's all high school testing and the 6th and 8th grade science test. After that, the following year, 2014, 2015, the EOGs, which is the 3rd through 8th grade math and grading tests, will be all online.
Right, they're going to take it all the way down to 3rd grade.
They're going to take it all the way down to 3rd grade. But they're also going to allow the 3rd through 5th grade to access written tests. But they're saying at this point the online tests give a child a much better environment to take them. So that folks in only one question per time.
So that gives us 2 budget years, 18 to 24 months, right, to get what we pay. And the state's sending us how much money? Zero.
That'd be zero. That's another good one.
I thought I'd ask the question.
Right.
This is another
Can I ask a question just out of stupidity, because I sit over there, I think I've got one of those 64% that are, I think about 20% of them are like abacuses, or abaci, if that's the right word. But I think I've got one of those. But at least my monitor works now, which I'm very appreciative of. But my question would be, sometimes, and I'm not a computer whiz bang, you are, sometimes I worry about bandwidth. And I worry, while I'm absolutely understand, and as I said last night, that's why I asked the question, can you tell me the numbers, because I'd like to see if we can get you there. Are we going to have the bandwidth we need if we put every school in the county taking EOGs and EOCs at the same? Well, of course, the EOGs will go different from the EOCs because we'll be at the end and they'll be in the beginning of May. I understand that. But I wonder, I really wonder if you take the stuff over at that high school and you load down with 2 EOCs on the same day or 2 or 3 EOCs simultaneously, so you got 70% of the high school taking an EOC at the same time, do we have the bandwidth for that? Or is it going to slow it down to a snail's pace and all the hardware in the world won't help me because I don't have the bandwidth?
Right, we have to be careful of that. And MCNC is our internet service provider. It's the state network. They provide us 100 megs of service for free, no cost to the school system, 100 megs of service. Once we reach the 60% utilization mark, about 70% of the time, they monitor this constantly. They bump us up to the next level, and that just happened. We just got bumped up to 250.
So if we don't have enough bandwidth, it's their fault.
They will provide the bandwidth we need. They always are constantly monitoring the bandwidth, and once we reach that 60% mark,
I just don't want to get us marching down a plan and buy all this hardware and say, gosh, it's great, everybody's got it, but we can't use it because we don't have enough bandwidth to make it work.
That's something we didn't really answer last night. We didn't ask.
Yeah, I didn't think I wasn't smart enough to ask. Right.
But you were at 100 meg bandwidth.
We were at 100.
You're now 250.
We just moved to 250.
So if you let's assume that you increase the number of computers, the number of people online at the same time, and you hit 60% capacity 70% of the time.
They bump us up to the next
250, then they would bump you up to.
I think it's 384. Maybe 500.
384, and that doesn't cost us anything else.
That costs us nothing. That costs the school system nothing.
So if we had everything online we needed online, we would still have the bandwidth because it would be almost 4 times what it was.
The only time we might have a problem was the first time we took the test. I guess what I'm asking, Jimmy, in all those big meetings that they have talking about technology throughout the state, is somebody in the, I don't want to make it sound like they wouldn't think of something like this, but do they understand what they're talking about when they say the entire state at the same time is going to take 1 to 2 EOCs, and we're all counting on them delivering the bandwidth we need to make that happen? Somebody, I'd love to know that somebody down there is actually thinking about it.
I think NCREN and MCNC, the internet, the state network, is very conscientious of that, and they have a lot of pressure on them to make that happen. And I think
they ain't felt pressure until they start, until the whole state gets shut down in the middle of an EOC because they ain't know where to go.
I think prior, they tried that several years ago, and it failed miserably.
Yeah,
but
that's what the physics test is the one that leaps the mind. The test that never was, because they never could get the dadgum thing to work. Never could pump enough bandwidth in people.
I believe ITS was our internet service provider at that point. MCNC and NCREN have stepped in and built the state school network, the statewide network, and they're really doing a good job. Dave Francis has done that.
And the hardware money's only half the issue. I'm the poor schmo that has to sit there in the classroom and try to re-pump up a bunch of kids that have just gotten pumped up to take a test, and now I have to look at them and say, oops, remember that day you weren't going to have to be here? Well, now you're going to have to be here that day, and I know you're still going to be fired up to take this test and do really, really well on. I mean, I understand, and I know you understand. I'm preaching to the choir, and I should. I know you understand that. I just want to make sure.
They're completely out of paper.
They're trying to get completely out of paper.
I didn't know. You always get paper.
So I'm on your side here. I worry that when it comes down to it, that some kid is going to punch go and the screen's going to go blank or freeze up, and then we're going to be sitting there going,
this is all required of our race to the top.
So I'm with you. I'm not trying to. It's not y'all's responsibility.
I feel more confident than ever that the state does have those safeguards in place to make sure that we don't have the bandwidth.
Other than the testing, and I think I understand that, getting that back up to the 5-year cycle, which we say now we're on a 9-year. So the oldest computers that you're cycling back off are 9 years, going on 10 years old.
Yeah.
Will be in their 10th year.
Yeah, this coming year.
So
That's
So the upgrade you think we need to do to meet the testing requirement is also going to give faster computers for students, for their labs, for their.
It will, it'll give us
Explain that.
a boost to upgrade all the systems in the school system. And we're gonna look at this like, not a one-size-fits-all. We're probably gonna do some schools with iPads and some other alternate devices, some VDI. We're gonna look at the best solution for providing those testing environments for the kids and putting the most computers on the front of the students. Because right now with the number of computers we've got with the computer labs we have in some of the elementary schools to cycle all those kids through, it would take 6 weeks to get through. We don't have a 6-week window to do testing. We'd have to get very,
So you not only don't, right here, I don't put words in your mouth, are you saying you don't have, the computers are getting too old, and you don't have enough of them?
we don't have enough of them. We got
It's
one line
a
that
double
goes-
problem, Kevin. When you start talking about the testing, we do not have nearly enough computers right now to even dream.
I know.
What'd you say last night, 6 weeks?
We
6 weeks to get a set of EOCs done.
I know Commissioner Tate and I went,
As a number.
visiting some schools and whatnot, but we went to Highland School the other day. Of course, they have a unique situation like Nantahala does, or K-12 school, which brings all the challenges that we know. But they really do not have anything close, I think, to.
That's probably one of my biggest complaints, which I'm sure you know, is there's a big fear coming next year with state mandated these EOCs and DOGs getting ready to come up, that they aren't gonna have enough time to get all the students through the computers, the few computers that they have, and then whether or not those computers would work. So we're gonna try to mitigate that. It's probably the biggest complaint I have from school, other than air conditioning.
I tell you that's system-wide, it is.
And I
Everybody-
say the K-12 environment is different because we have so much online course access that's required. So really, the online course in virtual public schools saving us money from adding staff in those areas. So every day, every block, there's a lab full of kids that are doing online courses at Highlands and Nantahala.
So you're taking them out of their classroom environment for several weeks to get these tests. So we've got to get the numbers of the students, the machines in the students' hands up.
You said the magic word iPad, I'd love to name this thing, but are these, for most DOCs, accepted?
The state has told us that is where they're heading. They're making sure that all tests are compatible with iPads before they implement the tests. The previous tests, the ones that they gave last year, were not, because some of the animation for flash-based, they're rewriting those tests to make sure they are compatible with iPads. And I think, putting another computer lab in is going to cost us $56,000 to put a full room lab in. I can do an iPad card for about $16,000. So,
And think about how this thing works, and I don't want to belabor the point. If you think about how this thing works, and you think about taking an EOC, I would much rather take it on this, where I can flash through the questions than have to sit there and punch keys to go back 5 questions and do the question I want to do. It's so much easier on the iPad. So if they're not headed that way, then they.
Well, that was actually my next question. Are we looking at? I know we've always been sort of a PC world.
Right.
Some schools are more the Apple, Macintosh. We've always been sort of the PC world. But I would agree that the iPad, just because I have kids in school myself, that's where it's headed.
Yeah, exactly. You got a generation.
And college, if you're in college and you don't have an iPad, where it used to be a laptop, it's now an iPad, and that's where it's.
And if you've seen the textbooks, if you've not had the time to look at some of the textbooks that Apple made available for the school systems, they're phenomenal. I mean, they're really great. So definitely download some of those. I think that's where we're going to have to go to be able to accommodate these tests. And not just that, we've got 2 computers in the corner of each classroom, and that's not very useful. You can't just send 2 kids on it. It's not very feasible to send 2 kids over there and let them be out of class time to work on. If we had a cart that we could bring in the classroom, or more computers so they could share, or more devices that we could share, that would help the classroom instruction.
Frankly, my concern is the same as it was 10 years ago. I served on the school board. If we don't keep up. I understand if you go into, there's a lot of jobs that don't require computers, I acknowledge that. But there's a lot of businesses that would surprise you, and you know this, I'm not telling you anything, where you need that computer ability, that computer ability to network, to work on computers. And if we don't somehow at least keep up, we're falling further behind. And that was my concern coming into this thing. I thought we were getting there, and then all of a sudden, it appears that we've fallen behind. And I just had to ask a question why. It's not being critical of you guys. I just need to know from my standpoint how we got there.
We greatly appreciate your support in that endeavor, because that's a non-negotiable. We have to be there. We have very little with it.
If you educate, so where we live, you know,
Is this where we are?
Correct me if I'm wrong, didn't we, last night we, Mr. Burrow, put some numbers together and get into the county manager, and then we would take some minor perspective on the stage, you know, what you had to have to do the, what's exactly.
What do we have to have, to get back to 9 years? We know that, I think. Right. What do we have to get to 5 years? What do we have to get test capable? It seems to me that you can mesh those two. You can mesh that 5-year rotation plan and get in test capable, and there should be some economy of scale there. Right. You should be able to work that such that maybe the number we're kicking around, we're not going to tell you what that is lower than what we, you know, than what I think that it might be. I've got a number in my mind, but I don't want to throw that number out there. I want to see what you come up with, and then I'll compare your number to my number based on what I think I know, which is not nearly as much as what you know.
And Tim, would you get a number? And I would agree, I don't know what the consensus is, but I think we need to be on a minimum of a 5-year rotation on our computers. If we don't,
really are.
It's ridiculous.
And I hate if there's any
so
way
see what it is
to do that.
to get us there.
Okay.
We understand you're playing catch up, and also give us a time frame. Can we do this over 2 budget years?
I think 2 years would be the good time frame to implement.
And that, in my mind, that makes a big difference, because we do have, you know, we do have some fund balance money available, and that's, you know, when you run into a recession like we've been in, that's, in my opinion, that's where it's going.
If they stop buying yellow school buses, we're going to be real happy that much.
So can we spread it? Can we spread it over 2 years?
I think 2 years would be a good time frame. It will give us time to implement these things, test some of the things out that we're going to be, some of the new technologies, and that will get us there in time for testing for 2014. I think that'd be 2 months.
Because my concern with that, is we've already looked at Jack and said, if we want to keep the budget the same or lower, I don't think we're going to back off that until the economy improves dramatically. So there's no new money there. So I think if we can find a way to make this happen without getting into adding to our budget, which we think we can do, then I think we'll make every effort to make that happen.
Get you to the starting line with dollar sales probably to try to get the confidence.
Thank you. Anything else, Ron?
Thank you very much for coming back.
And appreciate it. Let us ask you questions. We asked those out of ignorance of how we got here and where we need to go. But if you could get those figures back, timeline, the dollar figures, and we can be over 2 years and get that to Jack, we need, by the 1st of May, we need to plug that into what we're doing.
We'd like some student feedback on what not to do for an EOC that's done online. I've got a classroom full of them that will be willing to tell you. I'll guarantee you that.
Now, we did the field tests today.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun, I understand.
Yeah.
Just kidding. I'm just kidding. No, I'm kidding.
Added to our capital outlay budget, is that what I'm hearing? Would that be feasible, just to add that?
We'd like to see a separate line on that.
We'd like to see what it is, and we'll work out the technology of how to make it work. We'll work out the method of how to get it to you.
Yeah, and that's going to be up to the whole board. I can just say, me personally, I would like for us to create a separate line item within our county budget. And let's set some money aside to be used for that. And then if we do it over 2 budget years.
As we do it.
That's just an idea, but we need to have some figures and a timeline before we can approach that. So we need to be hitting that about the 1st of May.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Tim, appreciate your intelligence. All right, we need to move on. 8B is an update on the adult dental program. Jim Rucker.
You, Robert?
Start on that side. This is my PowerPoint presentation here. Here you go, 2 slides. You use paper.
Very good.
That always works. This is where we are technology-wise.
Don't take much problem paying. It's just a dark.
No bandwidth necessary.
Back in November, you asked that we come and do an update in February, actually, on the adult dental program. We had some conversation with the Board of Health, and we kind of postponed that a month because we hired a full-time dentist who is here, and I want to introduce you to him in a minute. But just a little bit of history. In May of 2011, our adult dentist resigned. June 1st, we started providing the services using contract dentists 2 to 3 days a week, and we moved, with your approval, $44,000 from our salary line in dentists to our contracted services line. Based on where we thought we were going to finish the year at that point, trying to find a full-time contract dentist, we came to you in November, and you approved an additional $54,000 to cover that. We had some issues in negotiating that contract with the one company that we could find, and we were unable to achieve that. However, we were able to keep a dentist 2 to 3 days a week, a local dentist, thanks to some of the folks that did the time working in our program. In February, we hired Dr. Bruno Caldre. Dr. Caldre is here tonight, just so we can introduce him to you. And then, as of February 29th, we eliminated all of our contract positions, and we had expended out of our contracted services line for those positions about $37,000. If you flip your paper over, I'm going to go quick through a little bit of a spreadsheet here. Fees-wise, for 2012, this current budget year, we had budgeted $85,000. We think we're going to achieve about $95,000, which leaves an additional $10,000 in fees that'll come to the county. Medicaid, however, is a little bit the other way. We've had projected originally $180,000. We think we're going to do about $127,800, which is about a $52,200 shortfall in Medicaid revenues for the year. Our Medicaid cost settlement should be what we projected because it's based on last year's Medicaid expenditures, not this year's. The changes in Medicaid revenue will impact us in next year's budget, FY13. The county net at the beginning of the year was $7,153. With the $54,000 you approved in November, it put us at $61,153. So total budget of revenues was $381,000. We're looking at probably hitting a target of about $340,000, leaving us about $42,200 short at the end of the year. However, expenses. Total expenses budgeted at the beginning of the year, and then including the $54,000 approved in November, was $381,000. We're projecting to only spend $284,000. Part of that is due to the fact that we only had a dentist 2 to 3 days a week, and we didn't have, and we're not paying the benefits and other things for the full-time dentist, which means that at the end of the year we should finish underspent by about $96,000. That leaves a variance of $54,497. We are, again, projecting this. We're hoping that we can hit this. This is based on revenues as of the 31st of March. We're not out of the woods yet. We'll hopefully hit those revenue and expense projections and be able to return the total, the whole $54,000 back to the county without having spent a penny of it. But again, we have to hit those revenue targets. And I can tell you right out of the chute, Dr. Caldre, being an experienced dentist, has hit the monthly revenue targets in the dental program, and in some cases exceeded them a little bit. If we can continue that for the next 3 months, we'll be fine. And he has some ideas for some other things that we'll be bringing to you guys next month after we bring it to the Board of Health on doing some denture work and some other things, and that'll increase some revenue for the department as well. So in a nutshell, we're hoping we leave the entire $54,000 on the table at the end of the year at this point, if we can hit all of these projections of both revenues. What I need today is that the original approval for that money was approved just specifically for contracted services. And what we're asking is for that money to be left in the budget to the end of the year and not taken out now, since we have a full-time dentist, until we get to the end of the year in case we need to tap into that for other expenses within that section because of the revenue issue at the moment.
So you're just asking that we leave it 54?
54 even,
Okay.
where it is until the end of the year and see how we finish the year.
Dr. Calder, how was he hired? He was on contract?
No, he's a full-time county employee.
So he's just on salary?
He's on salary, salaried employee.
Jack or Chester, do we need to, we've already put that in?
We don't need to, we don't need to point it.
All he wants is a
I think what he's asking for some flexibility.
Don't ask for it back tonight.
He's
That's all
just
I'm
asking
asking.
not to take money. If we take no action, he keeps on running.
I keep the money until the end of the year. It comes back to the county.
I think we'll have consensus to do that, gentlemen.
That's how I need to hire more teachers.
Dr. Calder, welcome to Macon County.
Thank you very much.
We're glad you're here to serve
Glad
the
you're here.
citizens of Macon
Happy to be
County
here.
for a much needed service.
Where did you come from?
From Charlotte.
From Charlotte? Welcome to.
Well, you're almost welcome to North Carolina.
The true far western part of the state.
Any questions? I'm good.
Mr. Chairman, I just think it's really nice occasionally when this board shows the leadership it showed, took a chance, and it has paid us back. And I'd like to compliment the board and I'd like to thank Dr. Condrey for making me able to say this, because it didn't have to work out that way. But I think we worked well with the Board of Health, we worked well with Mr. Butler, and I think we won one. And you don't always win one, but by golly, when you do, you need to stand up and say it. And we won one.
Thank you, Mr. Butler.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim, very much. And Doctor, we welcome you to Macon County. Glad you're here. Thank you. Thank you. Under reports and presentations, we have Commissioner Beal, who has a,
Just real quickly, I'm sure this board knows, most people in the audience knows that Mr. Tom McNish moved to Macon County at the early age of 3 years old. He attended Kirby J. School and was a graduate of Franklin High School in 1959. I got a letter from folks from Franklin are going. Mr. McNish lives in San Antonio, Texas. I can tell you Mr. McNish's full story, but just to give you an idea, Macon County had two of the longest serving prisoners of war that was in the service, period. That being Mr. Nat Henry and Mr. Tom McNish. Mr. Tom McNish served as a prisoner of war for 6.5 years. A little bit of the history of Tom McNish. He flew 45 combat missions over North Vietnam before being shot down. He was captured near Hanoi on September 4th, 1966. He was released at the latter part of March 1973 after 6.5 years as a prisoner of war in Vietnam. Of course, those of us who don't know that Dr. McNish went on to the Pentagon, where he served as the Surgeon General of the Air Force Reserve, and earned many, he earned many awards and medals, including the Bronze Star with the V device for valor, the Victoria Silver Medal, Iron Medal for the 4 oak leaf cluster, Air Force Commendation Medal, Air Force Achievement Medal, Presidential Unit Citation, Purple Heart with 1 oak leaf, Prisoner of War Medal, Distinguished Unit Citation, Vietnam Cross of Gallantry, and the Vietnam Service Medal with 15 campaign stars. Mr. McNish is a Maconian, and we'll tell you today he's still a Maconian. He still owns property here in Macon County. Mr. Chairman, what I'm asking is that we authorize the county manager to put together a letter of recognition to our Maconian, Mr. Tom McNish, and these folks will be glad to deliver to them on his birthday, which is April the 29th. And so with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion that we authorize the county manager to come up with a letter of recognition for Tom McNish, along with one of our plaques that recognizing him as a flag from Macon County. And hopefully, Mr. Chairman, that at a later date, we can properly recognize not only Mr. McNish, but Mr. Henry in the very special way in Macon County. And so that is a motion.
Do we have a second? We have a motion by Commissioner Beals, second by Commissioner Haven. Any discussion on that?
I won't say anything other than say that when I was growing up, getting ready to go to Naval Academy, getting ready to go other places, there was two names y'all would heard. You knew there was a Vietnam War out there, but you always heard the names in the case of that. It was a real source of pride, not anything we can do to recognize him.
And educate myself, but I grew up a little young to remember a lot of that, but if you'll go to Google and Google, if you'll Google Tom McNish, it's amazing what you read about that man. It's incredible.
It really is.
Amazing. And I did that. It's amazing. This is very much deserved.
And I want to say this, Mr. Chairman, this came to me from Miss Becky Bird, that a lot of y'all know. Miss Bird and Tom McNish were schoolmates, I think, and were friends, lifelong friends. And so they're all going out for his birthday, so we'd like to send this and just token our appreciation.
When is it?
April 29th, in San Antonio.
Any other discussion?
Miss Bird and him was raised right close together.
Yeah, up on Warrior Road, I believe. Actually, the old McNish home place is the last house before you head up, I guess you call it Warrior, the crooked part. The crooked part. Okay, all in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion passes.
And if you, Mr. Manager, you let us know when you get that together, so each one of us can sign the letter, and we'll put it in the package together. Okay,
thank you, Commissioner Bill. Under old business, we have discussion and consideration of a proposed ordinance prohibiting smoking and the use of tobacco products within the county's park system. And we have
county attorney's has done some work on this, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
I'm sure you'll be happy to report on what he put into the board's consideration.
And to give some background, we had this presented to us a month ago, and the board had some questions, some legal questions, and we passed that to our attorney to follow through, see what other counties had done, what was within our legal rights or whatever to do. So I'm assuming, completed that work. So Chester, if you would report back to us.
The model ordinance that came to the board is in good shape. I'm happy to report. I have looked through. There are some very minor changes that I've made to make it Macon County specific. In addition, the model ordinance also was presented in a way where you had some options, and there were some editorial comments that needed to be removed. I removed those. The only change, I think, of any substance that I have put in for your consideration has to do with section 6B, and I think I sent each of you an email concerning that particular matter. That has to do with sanctions for violations. We have two different sanction provisions under section 6 for enforcement and penalties. One is a penalty for anybody who violates, which is a fine of not more than $50. In addition to that, the model ordinance had a provision in there that indicated an additional sanction for employees of the county that were found to have violated this ordinance. And that particular provision had read, in addition to any penalty under subsection A, employees of the county who violate this ordinance shall be subject to disciplinary action consistent with the county's human resource policies. As the interim county attorney, I am of the opinion that personnel matters are more appropriately dealt with under personnel policies as opposed to ordinances. So I have recommended that that be
just to be clear, the county employees would be subject to this ordinance, but there would be, this is asking for additional sanctions.
That is
Just
correct.
striking that.
In a sense, what you're saying is, with that particular provision, is not only can they be held responsible as any other citizen, you took it to its logical or illogical extreme, as the case may be, theoretically, somebody could lose their job over violations. Seems to be that that's a potentially disparate treatment. But other than those, you have a red line and stricken out version of the work that I did in your package, and as I say, the ordinance came in pretty good shape. Appreciate the work of those in the health department that brought that home to us. The principal portion of this ordinance is focused towards smoking, but it's also focused towards the use of smokeless tobacco as well. The state legislature had provided counties the specific authority to regulate smoking in recreational areas. There is not a corresponding provision for the use of smokeless tobacco. However, I think the general police power, ordinance making power of the county would be sufficient to cover that under the police power. In talking with those individuals at the state that have been carrying the banner on this project across the state, they've indicated that to date they're not aware of anybody having been prosecuted or cited. There's a requirement of a warning, and the indication is that if people are violating, it's generally a result of not knowing that they are violating, and when they're warned, then they turn themselves in. Okay.
Any questions of our attorney?
Ms. Burgess, do you have anything to add? Anything changed since your presentation?
No, sir, other than, we have had a passage of the 100% community college is going 100% tobacco free here in Macon and Jackson.
I will add, we do need your guidance as to an appropriate effective date of this ordinance. If the commissioners are inclined to pass it, we need to assert an effective date. And the writer of the ordinance suggested that we allow sufficient time for implementation so that signage and other things could be erected in accordance with the ordinance. And so, yes, we need a little bit of guidance from you as to when that funding might be available, when that signage might be available, so that we don't get caught in front of the horse.
As long as the ordinance is in place, we can go ahead and, start ordering the signage, and we want to give time to the community to be aware that this is going to be a change. We don't want to just go out there tomorrow and put the signs up and, like you were saying, the only concerns that have been met are some people didn't know. So we do want to give the community time to know. So as long as the ordinance is passed, you can make a future effective date that you feel would give us time.
Would 90 days be sufficient, do you think, or do you need more than that?
No, we wouldn't need that much time to get the signage, and that kind of thing. We just want to make sure that the community has time to adjust to knowing that this is passed. In other words, if right. I mean, if you
you make her.
But the effective date, it's just that it passes. The effective date will not preclude you from spending the money.
Exactly. If you tell us now that the ordinance is passed, the effective date would be in the future, then we can go ahead and start, the advertising, getting the signage, so that we can give the community time to know that effective this day, this is going to occur.
I noticed that in the editorial comments, they indicated that the recommended effective date be set between 30 and 90 days. So,
That's to give time to advertise to people.
I don't know how the board feels about it. If we pass this, I think we'll make it 90. You're heading into heavy usage time at these rec parks.
Right.
Fairness need to have an idea of business.
And we were taking that into consideration with the, 4th of July, and, people visiting.
That puts you up to July 15th, roughly.
is there a break date between sports that might make some sense?
About that time of year, Little League, it's Little League softball.
Little League ball, softball.
But it's gonna take a while. But with all that said, Mr. Chairman, even though I do have reservations about it, about having a smoke patrol, as you might call it, a bit patrol. But what I really foresee here is Don made one comment that I think, really solidified this for me, and that was that I think you'll see children using this to teach parents just as much as it will children. I do think that, because it's such a different age now with my children, and so with that, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we adopt this ordinance to begin effective 90 days from this adoption date under the stipulations as presented by County Attorney.
We have a second to the motion. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion to the motion?
I don't have any discussion, but I'd like to make a comment on it. I stated before that I don't use tobacco products in any way in favor of the kids. I'm going to vote for this, but I do feel like they should put a place somewhere far out of the area where the kids would be, or non-smokers, to allow them the privilege. I look at tobacco. I guess a pack of cigarettes cost what, 20 or 30 cents to manufacture them. I don't know what they cost a pack, $5, something like that.
Marlboro Light,
I don't know. But what I'm saying is, I see the people who use them spend a lot of money for taxes, and they're overpaying more than what they're worth, just like all of us. I'm very much a fine line person for freedom for everybody. I see this infringing on the freedom of other people. And I know, I guess, on this board right here, I've been the bad guy enough.
It was pointed out earlier, it's kind of hard to be the tobacco police. And a lot of times I think, as someone said, it's going to be a violation based on ignorance of the regulation. Once people understand that, I think they'll be respectful. And I think that's the point, is be respectful of other people, smoking and so forth. It depends on people that's I used to smoke. Never did snuff or chew tobacco, but I did smoke again.
Well, I understand.
I understand how addictive that habit is, but on public property, especially where a lot of children are, I don't see any downside on that, especially around children.
Well, that's my decision. I've talked long and hard about this, but
I guess the way folks in the state urge the adult population to look at this is to hopefully change some of the behavior of adults that are smoking, but hopefully encouraging young people along the way that maybe not make that habit of.
Okay, any other comments?
I just had a question. Ricky Bryson, who's a previous commissioner, told me that the county already took care of this, and at Zachary Field in Highlands, which is county property, all of this is not allowed already, so this is sort of redundant. He was asking me to check on it, so I mean, I just...
There's an ordinance on it, but I don't know.
Well, that's what I'm asking, because is that?
There is no.
There may be a policy, but there's
Maybe a
not an
policy,
ordinance.
but there's no.
Okay,
It
so
could, it could be just
the county.
a place.
But if he's talking about,
It's not
he
towns,
may be
it's
talking about
outside the county.
Little League Baseball, Little League Soccer, whatever that is.
They all have
They
policies.
already have this rule, and always have had the
Okay,
rule.
so that's the way it applies to the entire field, then?
Yes.
Right.
Call the question, Mr. Chairman.
All right. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you. Yeah, we'll take a 5-minute recess and let everybody stretch legs.
I was hitting about 80%. I missed a couple. I got most of them.
Good, Mr. Chairman.
All right, we'll call the meeting back to order. Good. Hope everyone had a good break. As my grandfather, the farmer, said, we're at the short roads now, so we're almost done. Let's see. New business permit from the town of Highlands. Jack, you got that? I'm sorry, you got that?
I'll do a quick little presentation. Bob Kelsey, the head of the Chamber of Commerce, handed this off to me today. I think this has just been a sort of a rubber stamp that y'all do for the town of Highlands and the town of Franklin every year. Bob presented to me that pursuant to North Carolina statutes, chapter 14, subsection 413, I'm going to read this for you. For purpose of enforcing the provisions of this article, the Board of County Commissioners may authorize the governing body of any city in the county to issue permits pursuant to the provisions of this article for pyrotechnics to be exhibited, used, or discharged within the corporate limits of the city for use in connection with the conduct of concerts or public exhibitions. The Board of County Commissioners shall adopt a resolution granting the authority to the city, and listen to this, and it shall remain in effect until withdrawn by the Board of County Commissioners, adopting a subsequent resolution withdrawing the authority. So what they're saying is that according to this, we should be able to prove it tonight, and we don't have to prove it every year. It's a done deal until we tell them they can't do it anymore. So that makes sense.
We'll need to prepare a resolution. Would it be acceptable to have that at our next meeting?
I'm great with it, as long as it's before July 4th.
Sure. You make note of that.
So, Mr. Taylor, you looking for a motion to go ahead and authorize the county attorney to prepare a resolution?
It might be good to do that so you can tell them that we.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and second to approve the approval of the fireworks display in Highlands.
Yeah, and I guess we do that for Franklin too.
They need to submit. I think that's Mr. Taylor, we need to submit.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. Jack, you have a change order?
Yeah, I have a request and recommendation from Mike Watson, architect from Bowers, Ellison, Watson, who's in charge of our new K-4 North Macon Elementary School. The contractor, H&M Constructors, has asked for 22 days. And when I first started reading this change order, it talked about all the snow we had. And I said, well, we hadn't had any snow. Then I realized it was talking about January of 2011. And so, we did have quite a bit of snow in January 2011. But he's asking for 22 days, and that would put the completion date for substantial completion as June 18th.
Motion to approve the change order, Mr. Chairman.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Bill, second by Commissioner Haven. All in discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Number 11, we have the consent agenda, which includes the minutes. Lori, you passed that budget resolution out. It was one that was at your place when you got here. I don't know that means anything. Do you need to explain anything about that, or?
I think Commissioner Cuthbert, he just asked if, there's a lot of acronyms.
It's a lot of business stuff there.
WAP stands for the Weatherization Assistance Program.
Okay.
The LIHEAP is Low Income Home Energy Assistance Program. And then the HARP is Housing Authority.
That one I got. That one I know.
Okay.
Okay.
So basically, it's money that the housing department's receiving to be able to do some weatherization to the low income.
Thanks, Lord. I appreciate it.
Okay. And we have the tax releases.
I think there's 3 of those on there. They were all due to clerical errors recommended by the tax assessors. All
Short list.
I I'd hate to back there, Chairman, let me just speak to the housing just a second. You know, we all been enacted with world changers, and it looks like we probably have the largest group of world changers we've ever had in Macon County.
Really?
And of course, they got plenty to do as the league keeps growing in housing.
So I think most of us be involved in it. We feed them every year. Our churches take the grief from them, and they stated that, but they stay at Macon Valley this year.
I do not know that. With this many, I don't know. If the numbers hold and what they've done, they dropped it all the way down to 7th grade or everything. So we have to be careful before we put them and help coordinate that. But
We'd have that Macon Middle School for several years, fed them there.
so we'll have to figure out something. But if they're coming and willing to work, we've certainly got something for them to do.
Absolutely.
So I just want to know, we don't know the exact numbers yet, but if it gets defined, we'll bring the report back to the board.
Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda? What's that?
160 was in your packet, 168 was the add-on.
That's just the personal stuff for Mount Valley.
Right, for all elementary schools.
I have a paper, I got a piece of paper to look at.
No, it works real good on the screen. He's got to look at the right.
All right, any other questions or a motion to approve in order?
So move the consent agenda with the additional.
Okay, we have a second. Second.
You can't leave me hanging on the consent agenda? Oh, it's right.
Motion by Commissioner Cutler, second by Commissioner Tate to approve the consent agenda as presented with the addition of the budget amendment. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion passes. Number 12, we have a representative, if you look under 12A, we have a planning board representative from the town of Franklin. And I think, gentlemen, those of you been here longer than me, the town makes its own appointment to that board.
Make a recommendation.
Is that correct? It's a recommendation. We have to approve that. Is that correct?
That's right.
So we've been informed that Derek Rowland has been recommended to replace Mike Gruberman. As you know, Derek took Mike's place there with the town, and I think Derek would be a great addition to that board, so I would certainly recommend him. Okay, we've got a motion from Commissioner Haven to accept Derek Rowland to the planning board. Second by Commissioner Tate. Any discussion?
He also replaces Mr. Rubenman, not only in the job, but on the planning board also.
Correct. Correct.
Just to note, this is a 3-year appointment, all appointments are 3 years.
Yes. Yeah. That comes underneath our last action term limits. Okay, any other discussion? All in favor of accepting Derek Rowland to the planning board, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. And under 12B, we have, that's just for information, these are people coming up for appointments. There's a number of boards on there. I won't read that to you, but that just gives you an idea. We have a couple of planning board that are expiring toward the end of this month. We'll need to address that in May. We have, what else I noticed, Jack?
All the community funding tools already expired.
Right, and
We need to,
we've got several appointments that have evidently slipped by and expired in the past year, that we can't find a record where they've been reappointed. We need to go back and verify.
Jack, we'll need to advertise for the planning board positions, 2 of those. And my question too, what about people who have applied in the past? Is their application still there?
We'll contact them and see if they're still interested.
I would give them a courtesy call, because they may assume that they've applied.
We'll contact them, see if they're still interested in being considered.
And don't make them fill out another application unless they want.
They don't have to unless they want to.
Yeah.
One they already have.
And then, as liaison, I think Commissioner Peppers and I were the community funding tool. I think we'd want to keep those same folks if they're willing to serve, but we need to contact Then we'll also
You
advertise
need to make that happen, you advertise.
that. I'm not sure how many.
I'm not sure you're gonna have a long list for the
community funding pool,
but we gotta advertise it.
but that appears to be the two things that we need to address.
I also recommend, Mr. Chairman, if you'd look at the Franklin Board of Adjustment. On the
Yes.
second page, that was expired, and Janet, I'm not, somebody needs to touch base with Janet. And also the Watershed Review Board. You know, this is some of the boards, you're not gonna have like we've said before, you're not gonna have abundance of people line up, because these are boards that still needed.
We actually do see people.
So you got Neville, of course, is no longer with us, and most of these folks, if you'll notice, are from Highlands, because that's where the watershed, that's where the originates over. So I would ask that if, you know, if these people, or if Jimmy has some folks, that these people might want to serve, they need to be contacted, see if they want to renew first of all, I think.
And you need to advertise those.
But you need to advertise.
As well,
Oh, yeah.
according to our board policy. So you got the Watershed Review Board needs to be advertised, 2 positions on the planning board, and 2 seats come up the 1st of June on the farmland preservation,
And you got the entire Board of Adjustment.
and the entire board of adjustments, less, I think Ms. Walters was, well,
Let me ask a question about that. Having everybody coming up the same place, don't they have to give
I don't know.
information on that?
How we got ourselves.
Well, I've always said that, Mr. Hagan, since we started this new board policy, we had to redo it, you know, 3 years ago. That's the same thing, but how many is on the board? I think there's just 7 on the Board of Adjustment. I believe there's 7.
Oh, so you got 7.
So there's 3 names staggered.
Yeah, they're staggered. They're supposed to be staggered. Not all of them go at the same time.
All right, okay, that's the question.
You've only got 3 that appear to be up right now, right?
You got Sue Walter, Dwight Benson, and Gary Gray.
She was a year ago. Is that still on?
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Sure.
Last year, when the board was starting to deliberate about how to deal with term limits and board reappointments and all these issues, there was kind of a hold that was put on appointments. And so what it has done, it has crept up and essentially become a backlog of things.
Okay.
And what we were trying to do this evening was get all of this information back in front of you to make you aware of what was coming at you and to let you know that these would be put on the website and we'll accept applications.
Well,
And then
these are all-
May, you're gonna have a whole lot of stuff on your agenda about.
That's fine.
Okay.
So if I'm reading this right, everyone's on this list except for 2 in the farmland preservation are expired.
Basically,
Everybody on this spreadsheet that we have, except for 2 that expired end of May, correct?
Well, on the back page, you still got, on the second page, you got some that's,
No, I think they're all expired.
they're all gone too.
it says
It's all 2000,
You're right.
they're all 2011. So
And then there's some in April that are coming up in the board adjustment, but they're basically gone too. So I mean, this is all,
So by the time it's May, the only 2 that would have to be on there is the 2 that are expired May 31st.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we need to advertise all these.
We do them all at one time, but you need to get them on, they need to be on the schedule, but this is, and then our policy changed a little bit, so. it's
Now, all
gonna
these
take a
folks
while
have to
to
make
catch up.
application if they wanna, they gotta all make applications if they wanna review.
Jim, can I ask you a question about you? Have you been to the TDC meetings yet, or in Highlands? Because I thought that Helene and Sabrina had already left that board, and
You are correct.
yeah, so I'm not sure who's sitting there now in their place, but they're not there anymore.
I think we've done appointed to replace them.
Yeah, we've done it already.
Yeah, we've done replace Sabrina Hawkins and Ellie Siegel.
Yeah, a while ago.
Yeah, that's done, been
I'm
done.
not sure. What we need to do is look back and make sure that we didn't miss, and some of these people may have been reappointed and we missed them, so we need to verify
Well,
that.
they're not even on the board, those 2.
But
We think we
people that were appointed to replace them.
Can't remember.
I'm almost positive.
Correct. We'll do it maybe.
Who's gonna be in charge of contacting these folks that tell me they gotta put an application in and
Mike, you gonna do that real start?
Yeah, we'll contact them and then send them, actually, they've got an application online, all they gotta do is just fill it out and send it in, so. It does require a lot of information, basically their name and their address and contact information, if they're interested in serving, so some of them are very simple.
and some of them may go through with the application.
Some of them may not,
Good people.
yeah. I can't disagree with that, some of them. Some may say, well, I'll serve, but I'm not gonna ask you to serve. If you ask me to serve, I'll serve, but I'm not gonna ask you to serve, so we're gonna run into a little bit of that.
But according to our board policy, though, if no one applies,
Then
we can reappoint the people on there. That's what the back is.
Gotta make sure they're on this list. Two of them aren't there.
All right, Jack, you'll take care of that.
Well, that's it, and this will be, when we get this thing straightened out, you'll get, at least on a monthly basis, a list, if not a monthly basis, at least every couple of months, a list of vacancies that may be
And
occurring.
it'd be nice to know what's coming up.
And that'll be a part of your regular agenda, so you'll have that to look at.
And I'll go ahead and tell you, after you get done with this batch, if you will, the next couple of months are also going to have several large batches, and then it will smooth out.
Well, it's not long. It's pretty done away with it 3 years ago. That's a fact. That's just the truth.
All right, I think, Chester, we do have a need for a closed session to preserve the attorney-client privilege. Is that correct?
That's my understanding.
Okay. Is there anything we plan on taking the action on when we come out?
I don't think so.
So it's information, because I'm not sure what it's about.
Information on.
Information, okay. I would entertain a motion to go into closed session
So
to
moved.
protect attorney-client privilege. Somebody second that?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
I should have let
Motion passes. We'll be back out in a moment.
Consent agenda? You kidding me? You know, I could draw the consent agenda?